Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yep, great. Thanks for all the great questions so far. We'll get to those in just a couple minutes. So I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Julie Hart. I'm the project coordinator. And tonight we're really excited. We're trying out a new forum to try to provide some outreach to Atlas volunteers. As you know, we're trying to still collect data this year, despite everything that's going on. And we're trying to change a lot of things over to electronic formats. And I'm really excited tonight to see that so many people are really interested in the Atlas and have joined us, and to see your faces and everything is really nice. I miss being able to go out and do talks and workshops and being able to meet you all in person. So hopefully this is a good way for everyone to kind of connect again with the other Atlasers that are out there. So tonight we have a fairly short introduction that we're going to give, just kind of showing like what type of data has already been submitted and some of the really interesting stats and stuff. And I do want to acknowledge that, you know, everyone, you know, in the state, we have a stay-at-home order for the whole state, but then within different towns and counties, there's different guidelines of what you should be doing, and we definitely want you to follow those guidelines. And you know, if all that you can contribute this year is observations from your backyard or from the local park or something, then that's still really valuable for us. And I think it's still a really great way for all of us to kind of stay connected to nature. And it provides a really great way for us to kind of cope with what's going on right now. This morning I had a towhee finally show up in my yard, so that was really nice. It's a great sign of spring migration. So it's a great time to try to get out there as much as we can. So this is our first trial run of a town hall meeting where we are going to open it up to you guys and try to answer all of these great questions that you've already submitted. Yeah, and then hopefully we'll be able to get a little bit of feedback from you at the end as to what kind of future webinars or topics, or if you want to have more town hall meetings and that type of stuff. So we'll save a little bit of time at the end for a little bit of feedback as well. So I just want to give a shout out to anyone else who is on either the steering committee or is a regional coordinator. If anyone else wants to chime in and just introduce yourself, this would be a good chance to do that. And then we'll switch over to a brief overview of some of that data that's been already collected. Come on, I know some of you are out there. Greg,
I can.
Oh, hang on, Zach. Let's see. Chris, did you want to speak?
Sure, I can go. This is Chris Wood. I'm on the steering committee, and then I also lead the eBird team here at Cornell.
Zach?
Hi, I'm Greg here. I'm a research scientist at SUNY Brockport, and I'm also the vice president of NYSOA at the moment and on the steering committee. This is awesome, by the way, Julie.
Great. Zach and Matt Medler, I unmuted you as well.
Zach Schwartz-Weinstein. I'm the regional coordinator for the Capital Region.
This is Matt Medler. I'm one of three regional coordinators for Northern New York, together with Tom Wheeler and Jeff Bolsinger. And then my day job is working as a collections manager at the Macaulay Library at the Cornell Lab.
Molly?
Hi, I'm Molly Adams. I'm one of the regional coordinators for New York City, and I also work at New York City Audubon.
Jerry Turin, maybe you want to introduce? See, I'm trying to go through as people ask me to unmute them, and I'm trying to do that. Find them.
I can jump in while you do that, Julie.
Yeah, great.
I'll be talking a little bit more in a bit, I think, but hi everyone, nice to see a bunch of familiar names and faces here. I'm Ian. I've worked at the Lab of Ornithology on the eBird project team, along with Chris and a few others, working on both the Atlas in kind of the steering committee role. I'm the chair of the outreach committee, and then also working on eBird globally, where I help kind of coordinate the technical side of all the atlases that are run through eBird around the world that are run through eBird. And it's been super fun and super exciting to be a part of this one, and I'm excited to talk more about it today.
And I know that Matt Palumbo, who is a steering committee member, he's an employee with DC, he's the state bird biologist there. He is also in attendance tonight, but I'm having trouble finding him in order to unmute him.
So, I think somebody just unmuted me somehow.
There you go.
Hey, thanks, Julie. Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Matt Palumbo. I'm an avian diversity biologist with New York State DC. I'm on the steering committee. I'm in the central office in Albany. I work on a wide variety of T&E bird related issues throughout the state. Excited to be here.
Yeah, and T&E is threatened and endangered.
Yeah, sorry, jargon.
And, Wendy, I see you there.
Did you just say me?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Wendy Tachi. I'm one of 2 regional coordinators for the Hudson region.
I think that's probably everyone. Ian, if you want to go ahead and do the brief intro that you prepared for us. I know that Ian has some surprises even for me in store, so I'm excited to see what he's going to talk about.
Great, yeah, thanks Julie. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. It's exciting to have about 100 folks who have joined to hear about the Atlas on a Monday night. So yeah, as Julie said, I'll just kind of give a little bit of a brief update and kind of intro into what's going along and what's happened so far. It's pretty amazing. I mean, it's not even the middle of April yet, April 13th. And so we're really only 3.5 months into what is a 5-year project. And I just kind of pulled some quick stats today, most of which can be found on the Atlas website, just kind of dashboard of what's going on. And already 43% of priority blocks, which we'll talk about a bit more later, have data, which is incredible. The second number, the number of observations, is pretty cool, and this was the little bit of a surprise. So the last Atlas, some of you may have participated from 2000 to 2005, and during that effort, there were 519,000 observations of breeding birds that were collected. So in the first 3.5 months, we've already gathered, all of us on this call and throughout the Atlas, 60% of the data that were collected in 5 years in the last Atlas. So again, like Julie said, there might be some limitations on what we might normally be doing right now, but there's still a lot of super exciting things to see, a lot of fun birds out there, and we're already collecting an incredibly notable and valuable set of information. Over 820 people have already participated. That's 2/3 of the folks that participated over 5 years in the last project. 60 species have been confirmed, and 155 species have at least been marked as possible. So possible, probable, or confirmed, which is what we call coded. So super exciting start, and the breeding season isn't even fully here yet. So things can only get better. Another thing too, I know I'm a map person, and so it really helps me to look at this kind of information kind of visualized across our state. And so this is kind of the standard for measuring where atlasing has really been happening, the diurnal effort hours, daytime atlasing. And so this can be found by going to the Explore section of the Atlas webpage and going down to Effort Map. And you can look at it a bunch of different ways. I'll show a couple here. But this one, just hours of daytime atlasing, is just a super great way to understand kind of where people have been atlasing and how much effort they've been putting in. And you can see some predictable kind of hot spots here. The darker the colors, the more atlasing has been done. Albany area, the metro area, Long Island, Ithaca, Rochester, and then some predictable gaps. And these are the gaps that we knew going in would be the most fun to fill, the biggest challenges for us as a group. So we might not be able to travel as much right now, but it's cool to be able to look at this, see this update in real time. Whenever you submit a checklist from your backyard or your local park, this gets updated every day with the amount of information that has been gathered by block throughout the state. So the effort map for hours, you can also look at it by the number of species. You can see kind of a little bit difference here, how in this early season, kind of downstate, there's more diversity in most of the areas than there is kind of in upstate already, because things just haven't gotten back there quite as much. So it's cool to see these kind of patterns, and be really exciting to watch these continue to unfold in the coming months and years. And so one thing that I'm curious about, this is my one little quiz challenge for folks. Out of these species that have been coded so far, what is the species that has been confirmed in the most blocks? See who can get this first. Put it in the chat. Bald eagle is a guess. Good guess. Not it. Great robin. Nope. Geese. Barb Stone got it first. Canada goose. And Alejandra got it as well. So Canada goose is the bird that has been confirmed in the most blocks. Over 260 blocks already have confirmed Canada geese. And so this is one of the species maps that you can pull up in the Atlas by, again, going to Explore and just typing in any species name. And again, real time, updated every day. You can see block by block where people have reported what they found so far. So Canada goose, obviously, all over the place. A couple other fun ones are kind of challenge of the month. Last month was American woodcock, to see how many blocks folks could find woodcocks displaying in. So here, the darker the purple, the kind of higher breeding category. So there's only a couple confirmed woodcocks so far, but in general, there's a lot of probables. And that's because most people have them painting and displaying at dawn and dusk, and that is a C, which is a probable code. So cool to see these kind of epicenters of people looking for woodcocks around Albany, some dedication up here in North Canton, I believe, and then a bunch around Finger Lakes and regions west, as well as downstate. And then this month, one of the big focuses of activity is woodpeckers. So woodpeckers in this early season are really super active right now, and able to kind of be out there. When you're atlasing, this is the best time of year to really find a lot of woodpecker activity. So as other birds tend to arrive, May, getting into June, woodpeckers have kind of already peaked in activity and are getting very reclusive, much harder to find, quieter. So this time of year, our challenge this month is to find basically woodpeckers building nests. And this is a good time. Downy, as you can see, Downy woodpecker has not been confirmed anywhere, but has been reported throughout the state. And then the other thing that I just wanted to kind of go over quickly, since hopefully this will kind of answer a lot of the questions, or some of the questions at least, that have been raised already. And these are what we see as kind of the 3 Atlas essentials, that really to Atlas, there's kind of 3 core things that really kind of provide the foundation for this whole project and how we're collecting information. And after this, then we'll be perfectly open to any and kind of all questions elaborating on these or anything else. The first one is something that has come up in these questions in the chat already, and really the block system. Blocks and navigating blocks is something that does take a bit of effort at times. You need to be aware of where you are in the landscape, where the edges of blocks are, but it is essential for the collection of data in a way that can be used for the atlas. So with eBird, you're actually collecting data at very precise locations. It might be a park or a specific stop along a road. And you're reporting that. And as long as you're doing stationary counts in eBird, just staying in one place, you don't really need to worry about blocks too much. You just go birding, you log your sightings, put your codes in your checklist, which we'll look at in a moment, and you're good to go. But once you start traveling on checklists, it's important that if you encounter the boundary of a block, you stop that checklist that you're in the middle of and start a new one when you enter the new block. Or when you hit that boundary, just turn around, don't go into the new block. Or if you do end up keeping a list of birds that crosses a boundary, that you choose to not put that checklist in the atlas data set. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But basically, if you did end up collecting data that crossed multiple blocks, it's still great to have in eBird and is really valuable, but it's not a good fit for the atlas where we're collecting it at this block level. You might have noticed this kind of block grid work. Looks almost like, in my mind, like a DNA helix, kind of spinning throughout the state. And these are the priority blocks and the non-priority blocks. And so priority blocks are here in dark outlines. And the way that these were chosen is that these blocks are based on USGS topo quadrangles. And so each one of those quadrangles covers an area that is 6 atlas blocks. Within that, we've divided that into 6, and then the northwest most and the center east one are priority blocks. What this does is allows us to sample 1/3 of New York in a way that allows us to understand all of New York. So there's about 6,000 blocks out there. And rather than trying to get folks to cover every single block, we're just really aiming for getting 1/3 of blocks complete. And then if we're able to do that, we can expand out into others. What is important to note is that any sighting anywhere in New York matters, wherever you are, priority block or not a priority block. But what the priority blocks suggest is if you have an hour to go birding and you're right on the border, you happen to live on the border of a block, we would ask that if you can make the choice to always try and sample priority blocks, because those are higher priority. But non-priority blocks are still valuable. They're still mapped and included in all the outputs. It's just that we really want to cover those priority blocks. So if you don't live in one or your favorite birding spot isn't in one, don't be too worried, that still counts. But if you have the chance, please go to a priority block. So that's blocks. The second essential is codes. So now that you understand your blocks and are able to kind of stop your checklist and keep it within that square, while you're out birding, you will encounter birds that are behaving like they're breeding. And so we have a set of codes that we can pull up and go through if people have specific questions that are available, and all this information is available on the homepage of the atlas, that basically are matching behaviors to breeding meaning, if that makes sense. So you see a bird singing, all you really have to do is just say, I noted this bird singing in this location on this date. And as long as you're just learning the codes for behavior, which are fairly simple most of the time, then that information can be analyzed on the back end to understand what the birds were doing. And so for those who have atlased in past atlases, you may have been familiar with concepts like safe dates, which were basically hard date cutoffs where before a certain date in the spring, you would not include any codes for that bird because it could be migrating at that time. What we've made the decision to do is collect any observation of bird behavior when you encounter it. If you have a singing song sparrow, you just report a singing song sparrow, whether that is on March 1st, April 1st, May 1st, June 1st. And if we're able to collect all that information, then after the fact, we can decide where we want to kind of draw the lines as to when a bird was breeding in the area. And so that way there's kind of a single decision made for how data will be analyzed, rather than different folks including different decision points for when they mark a song sparrow as singing. Hopefully that makes sense. Happy to talk more about that later. But at the end of the day, it's really just these bird behaviors that you see all the time. It's a bird singing, it's a bird interacting with another one territorially, it's a bird building a nest. And learning those codes and matching them is the second essential key to atlasing.
Ian, do you mind if I just quickly chime into Brendan's question there that was on this? And it is because it's so fundamentally different from the way that atlases were done, it's worth just spending, I think, a couple minutes on it. And the key point for me is that, you know, the place where birds have nests is one component of what, you know, an entire bird's life history. And what we want to be able to understand throughout time is how any aspect of a breed may be changing. And so if we're to look at population trends and try to understand why there are declines in, you know, why have there been 3 billion birds lost, by gathering this information, the highest level breeding code, regardless of if it's where we think the bird's nest actually is, we think that's going to be able to provide some type of insight into how the patterns of behavior could be changing. So don't get hung up on the word probable behind things like courtship behavior for long-tailed ducks. Instead, focus on the first word, and there's a process that we'll put in place that will allow us to adapt these in a very consistent way that we promise, you know, 2 or 3 years from now, we'll have some very interesting visualizations to show sort of how birds use the landscape and are engaging in different parts of their breeding behavior away from the breeding grounds, which I think is going to be something that no other state's ever done before, and a very different way of thinking about birds' life history. Sorry to jump in there, Ian.
No worries. Thanks, Chris. That's hugely helpful, and hopefully, Brendan, that helps. And yeah, certainly happy to dig more into that after as well, because folks have had some questions about that. So that's the second main essential, learning the codes for bird behavior. And then kind of the third and final one is that once you kind of have those first two things set up, you understand the blocks, you're only eBirding within a single block, you're using the right codes and you understand them. It's that you have to use the New York Atlas portal to have your data count for the atlas. And the reason for that is that when you're using the portal, we're able to assume that you have learned about blocks and that you have learned about breeding codes and are choosing to participate specifically in this project with that understanding. So if folks are just generally eBirding, we don't really have a way to know whether or not they understand about blocks or if they understand the breeding codes. And so we're basically not able to use information outside of the atlas automatically in the atlas results without having people move it into the portal or enter it in the portal and saying, yes, I understand blocks and I understand breeding codes. And so the third essential is to use the portal. And the nice thing is that basically you can just choose to use the portal from now until the end of the project throughout most of the year. And so on the mobile app, you can go in and we have instructions on the website for choosing the New York Breeding Bird Atlas portal from your settings in the eBird mobile app. Or if you're on the website, you can go to ebird.org/atlasny and use it there. And so to have your settings count, they must be entered through the portal, either on the website or in the mobile app. And so with those three things, that's really all you need to be a part of the Atlas: blocks, codes, and the portal. So it's something that anyone can do, and everyone on this has already done. And so we're really excited to see what we're able to continue to gather. At this rate, we'll probably pass the last year's full Atlas by the middle of May or by June. So it'll be exciting to see how that goes. And these three essentials will hopefully help with that. And happy to take any more questions that anyone has. And I think Julie's been digesting these questions, and we'll have the best sense of what we can dig into and go from there.
Yeah, there's been a lot of questions. Okay, yeah, I mean, everything from like, do we have to use eBird, to how do we split checklist across blocks? How do we find out where we are in the blocks? And yeah, there's been lots of questions. So I think I would like to start with some of the really commonly asked questions, and maybe while we have a bunch of eBird folks on board, so Ian and Chris, you can chime in, but there's a lot of questions about how to split checklists across blocks. If you're like visiting, say, Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge, which occurs in 6 different blocks, how do we make separate checklists? And then a related question to that is, so what if you have been birding this location for 10 years and it's your local patch, and now you have to suddenly split it up into 2 different checklists so that it's in 2 different blocks? How does that, is there any way to bring that back into your patch afterwards? So.
That patch one might be the best one for Chris, because I know he's been working through that same one. Not to put you on the spot, Chris, but do you want to field that one?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, because there isn't an ideal answer for that. Part of the challenge, so Jesse and I live here at Monkey Run, and the typical walk I do is about 3.5 kilometers, and it goes across 3 different blocks. And so I'm sort of torn in the approach that I can take. One is that I often do is just do the segments of that, split them out. And I do that, I'd say, specifically when I'm really focused on wanting to do really solid atlasing. There are other times when I just decide that I really want, because I'm into my bar charts for the little patch I have here. So I make sure that I do that walk twice and just use eBird as the main portal. And then what I do is basically go in, and if I see a high-level breeding code that is higher than what has been recorded in the atlas, then I go through and just add that as an incidental for, suppose the first song sparrow that I see carrying nesting material or something like that, I'll go and I'll put that into the atlas portal. Really, the best thing to do, if you can do that, though, is to really enter separate checklists into each of the blocks, because that gives us the best location precision. But it's definitely it can be frustrating. Luckily, what I've found is that there are really only sort of, for me at least, 3 or 4 places that I regularly go and keep these sort of really interesting patches. For the most part, and what we're in the process of doing in eBird too, is really to adapt the hotspots that we have, particularly some of the heavily used ones, and to note, for things like the wildlife drive, we could go in and we could add sort of the components of the wildlife drive that fall in different blocks. And that's probably the best, the best thing we could do to allow us to do it. If you want to have all of this information together, you can also go and create a patch in eBird. There's if you go to the main eBird site right now, the monthly sort of challenge is on yard listing. The ways that you go about setting up a patch is basically the same, and then you can still get bar charts. And there's a link from your patches and from your yard to do that.
And I'll just second what we've been discussing too on the chat, which is that if you do go to a hotspot and that area crosses multiple blocks, then we do recommend that you create a new personal location for each of those blocks. And then what I recommend is, you know, I recommend that you put the block name in the new name for that personal location. And that way, when you go back there again, then you can easily recognize that that's the location that you used before for the atlas. So. Okay, wow, we have so many questions and so little time. Okay, one of the other really common questions that is coming up really to see your location in the field and how to see block boundaries. So I'm going to, let's see, or Ian, you're going to show how, yeah. You're going to show my blog post. Great. So I wrote a blog post a little while ago about how to find your location in the field. And there's multiple ways to do that. So one is to, if you use the mobile app, then you can see the location while you're in the field in the mobile app. And 2 weeks ago, I put up a tutorial on the website as well, and on our YouTube page, where it shows you how to actually see your location in the blocks from the mobile app. So that is also available too. And then if you want to see your location a different way, so somebody asked if you want to see your location before you start a checklist, you can't really do that in the eBird app. You can only see your location once you start a checklist. But what you can also do is what Ian is showing here, and that is you can download those block boundaries to your device ahead of time, either using Google Earth or Gaia or Venza or something like that. You can install all of the block boundaries for the entire state. And then because those are GPS apps, it'll show your location where you're standing in real time. And then there's also, if you look at the very bottom of the page, there's also a, oops, sorry, up just a tad, the mobile GIS, no, too far. Going down just about to the bottom. There's the mobile ArcGIS app is another way to see block boundaries in the field. So if you actually have a good cell connection, you can also do it. You can also log on to that, go to our website, click on that link, and then you'll be able to see your location that way as well. Not sure. Okay, and then the other question that people had was about using the interactive mapper. Ian, can you pull up the Shiny app?
Here, why don't I give you screen?
The screen?
And share.
Good. Okay, so I'm gonna open up. Okay, share that. Okay, so this is the interface for you to sign up for blocks. And it is also where you can see, you can download maps for each of the blocks. You can see what blocks have already been signed up for by other people. So on this map, this view, all of the yellow blocks that you see, all these yellow patches are blocks that have already been assigned to someone. And then the purple ones are those that are available still. And then when you zoom in, you can click on any block and you can download the maps. You'll see what county it's in. You'll see whether it's priority or not. You can request sign up, and that will take you to a Google form. And then you can also see what region it is. So if you wanted to contact the regional coordinator, you know what region it is, and so that you can contact the correct person. And then, just a second. Okay, so up in the top right here, there's different options for searching. So you can search by the block name if you already know. If you don't know that and you know the town, you can type in the town name, and then it will zoom you to that town. And then as you zoom in right now, the base map is not working. We had so many people hitting this website, and we were using a free map provider, and they blocked us. So now we need to find another solution, another source for getting those maps. But in the meantime, you can still click on down in the lower left. It gives you options for terrain and topo maps. And those are, last I knew, still working. Yeah, so they're still working. So you can zoom in and use that as well to find your location. So hopefully that, that helped address a bunch of people's questions there.
One thing too to note, just to follow up on that, around kind of block sign up, one of the other changes from past atlases is that with the way that data are able to be collected kind of by anyone, anywhere, at any time through eBird, block sign up isn't a requirement. If you do feel passionate about a block and you really want to commit to kind of doing that, then that's great. But you are able to atlas anywhere in the state at any time by just following those 3 atlas essentials earlier, basically. So as long as you're out there following the blocks, using the codes and using the portal, wherever you are, you can atlas without having to sign up for an entire block and committing to that. You can just dip into a couple blocks and do stuff, or sign up for one, whichever way you like to atlas.
Yeah, I think some people, they find it like a nice motivation to sign up, and then that makes them, you know, encourages them to go out more often. So if that's you, then definitely sign up for a block. And if that's not you, or you just want to be able to go wherever you want, then that's fine as well. Then following up on that, so, you know, on our website, you know, this is our homepage. That's just ebird.org/atlasny. And then all of the information about the atlas is on these about pages. So if you go to the about pages, you can see on the right here, there's a link for the atlas team. So if we click on that, you'll be able to read bios about people. And this is also where you get the contact information for the regional coordinators. So the block that I showed before on the mapping tool said that it was a block in the central region. So you can scroll down to the central region, and then you'll see for each region, there's this email link. And if you click on that, it will let you there. It'll prompt you to write an email to that person or persons. So in most regions, it's, there's multiple people, but there's a couple of regions where there's only one person. So depending on where you are, there's different people. So yeah, wanted to show that as well. Okay.
I can address a couple other quick questions that came up in the chat too. So Estelle asked how blocks are named. So the block layer that is used in this atlas is different from BBA II, largely due to the fact that the previous atlases were using an atlas layer that was kind of unique to New York atlases. And so in this third one, we've moved to using, as mentioned before, this kind of USGS topo block grid. So it's based on this kind of standard approach to atlas blocks that is used by every ongoing atlas in the US. And so that makes it much more comparable across states and across regions. And so those are named based on the name of the topographic quadrangle on the map, and then northwest, northeast, center west, center east, southwest, southeast. So each of those have 6 versions kind of the same name. And so once you look at it, it kind of makes sense. And the names are often quite helpful too, and kind of giving you an idea of where in the state it'll be just based on the name. Another question from Zach as well about kind of block assignment to counties for border blocks. Some of you might notice that a block itself might kind of straddle multiple counties. The way that the block is assigned to a county for purposes of tallying up how much atlasing has happened in a county is done using the centroid of the block. So if you just take the absolute geographic center, that point is what is used for that county attribution. So most of the time that doesn't really matter. If you're looking for your own bird lists and stuff, as long as you're putting the locations on the map in the right place, they count as the correct county for your birding. But the block itself and its totals count for only one county, and that's where the center of the block is.
And I'll add, there's been a couple questions about seeing past atlas data, and I'm trying to pull that up right now with the server's freezing. If somebody else, Matt just posted the link to it. That is where you can get the data either by block or by species. For some reason right now, for me, it's not loading, so it just loaded. Yeah, so that is one place to get data from the past atlas, but it's important to remember that the blocks are not exactly the same as they were in the previous atlases. We're using those topo maps now. So what you would do now, if you wanted to see what was seen in your area, you would have to look at the blocks in that area in order to see what you would expect to see within your block. Okay, where to go? There's so many questions. Hang on. Okay, there were a lot of questions about what if you go to a place repeatedly and you've already confirmed a species at that location, or have kind of a higher level code, and then the next time you go, you see something, you see less less evidence of breeding. Should you still report it every time? So that's kind of up to you. Ultimately, we are interested in more data rather than less data. As you submit each of those individual observations, you're helping us fill in important information about the breeding phenology for each of those species. So that's also relevant for us. But if it's too much for you, and then you can just say, oh, I know that osprey is on that nest, and you don't need to necessarily add that code each time until you see the young or something, and then you might want to bump it up to a nest with young, for example. And Ian's showing a nice phenology map. Do you want to explain it, or should I?
Sure, I can jump in. I love this. I think this is just so cool, and this is just such an awesome product of kind of what we can learn when we're all just observing birds in our backyards. So chipping sparrow, just arriving back. I had my first one in my yard today over lunch. It's very excited. I'm trying to beat Chris for the Tompkins County yard year list. We'll see how that goes. But so this arrived back, and I coded it as an S today. You can see that's kind of on par here. This map here is, or not map, but this figure is based on information from the Wisconsin Breeding Bird Atlas, a very similar kind of project that was collecting information like this throughout kind of the state throughout the year, and repeated observations of a species within a block or at a location. And what this does is allows us to look at kind of the whole breeding season of a bird through the codes. So this is chipping sparrow. Time is here on the bottom, and here are the breeding codes. So at the bottom here, you have the possibles going up here to kind of the confirms. So singing for 7 days, pair, copulation, courtship, display, carrying nesting material. You can see here at the left side, birds singing, they're carrying nesting material. Then as you get into here, you can see that ON, there's an occupied nest. There's birds here nest with eggs. So by kind of end of May, beginning of June, that's the sweet spot for that. Then after this, there's a nest with young a little bit later. They're carrying food mid to late June. And then there's feeding young and fledged young later into July. And so just a really cool and very simple way, this is just raw data of kind of looking at a single species and understanding, okay, they arrive back here. They, throughout the spring and into the summer are breeding, and then they're kind of fledging around June, July. And so for some birds, like bobolink is a good example, knowing exactly when they're breeding can be really useful to work with folks who might be haying fields. And if you know exactly when they're breeding in a region, then you can maybe shift that haying time a little bit to maximize the success of the bobolink. So there's both really interesting kind of birder questions and also real conservation applications of understanding this throughout the season. So if you're willing, every time you go out, log singing, log whatever you're comfortable with, highest code each time, no such thing as too much data.
And along the same lines too, if you are going out and doing, walking your dog or something, and you're not intending to be birding, but you see something while you're out there, then definitely go ahead and submit that as an incidental observation. I've been getting a lot of questions from people who think that those incidental observations aren't really worth anything. And they will help us, fill out that distribution map of where those species are breeding. So go ahead and enter those and, excuse me, enter those as incidental records. That is the correct way to do it. I think somebody, a couple short, quick questions. Somebody asked if you should enter the data as you go out and make observations, that, noting that in the past atlases, you would record everything on paper, and then at the end of the season, you would mail everything in, and then it would be entered at once. And so, the beauty of using eBird is that we can see the data in real time, and that really helps to guide other people's efforts that are going out atlasing. So, if somebody already has found a red-headed woodpecker in that block, then maybe you want to go somewhere else where there's red-headed woodpeckers and find them. So we really do encourage you to enter those data as soon as you can after you see them, and that really helps us as well. If we see something that is unusual or that we want to follow up on, then the sooner we can do that, the better. So yeah, definitely try to enter your observations as you go. As somebody asked if they could participate long distance, they were kind of, sent home out of state, and unfortunately you can't really, make observations, breeding bird observations remotely, but there are other ways to get involved. And, one that I just posted on there was that you can always offer to help enter data for other people that can't really figure out eBird. And then we also have quite a large number of Amish and Mennonite and Bruderholtz communities in the state, and they're not allowed to use some electronic devices. So we do need help entering data for some people as well. So that is another way to help out. And yeah, if you travel out of state and you're still in the Atlas portal, your Virginia sightings go into New York State BBA. No, so no, it'll kick you out of the Atlas portal or the data. Sorry, Ian, you should explain.
Yeah, no, I mean, the short answer is no. If you travel somewhere and forget to turn it off, it's not going to cause problems. Basically, the data and all the outputs and everything we looked at today for the effort and everything is calculated both within the portal and within New York State. So there's kind of double limitations there. So if you travel outside of the state and forget to turn it off, it might be a bit confusing to you as you go in and see things tagged with New York's Breeding Bird Atlas, but it won't actually impact the atlas in a negative way. And periodically, at least once every couple of years, we'll go through and make sure that we clean up kind of out of atlas pieces, but basically avoid it when possible, just because it'll be a bit confusing to you probably. But outside of that, it doesn't have any problems within the atlas. I'll just jump on Zach's quick question there. How does it work with blocks that cross into other states? Right along the Pennsylvania border, for example, there's a lot of blocks that have just like 150 feet in New York. And so all of those are not priority blocks. All the little sliver edge blocks are just kind of normal blocks, so no need to focus on them. If you do happen to be birding within them, it will only include the information that is in the New York side of that block. So within that little sliver, if you cross into Pennsylvania but are still within that block, it won't count towards the New York Atlas total for that block.
Right, and the assignment of the block assignment for your checklist is determined based on that location that you select for your checklist. So it's not like automatically, detecting your track location and splitting your observations based on where you walk. It's actually where you assign the data to. And it's something that a lot of people are confused about. Right, and then Matt did remind us that you can change the portal after the fact as well. That's pretty easy to do. There's some instructions on the website for how to do that. And then Estelle asked, about tracking your location. If you're using the eBird mobile app, I highly recommend that you allow the app to use your location services. That will then track your exact path that you're walking. And it will then calculate how far you've walked and how long you've walked automatically. And so you're not gonna have to guess at any of that. And then on top of that, just so you're aware that your track location is not public. So it's only, you can see that. So you don't have to worry about that. Somebody asked about, if somebody's a good birder, but doesn't use eBird, how do we get their data into the atlas? I've been getting a lot of questions about this lately. And there's, I'd say first off, we highly encourage that person to try to use eBird. If they can't, and say it's like your good friend or your father or grandfather or something, then you can work with them. You can make an eBird account in their name, or just like a dummy eBird account to enter all their observations for them, and then you can enter the data for them. We don't want you to put it into your own eBird account, because then you have two different observers, and the way that each of you birds is slightly different. And we also want to be able to contact the original person. So we want it tied to an email that they're going to check. So if we have, a question about the observation, we can follow up with them directly on that. So those are kind of the two options. And then if there's somebody out there that is a really good birder, and say you don't have time or you don't know anyone that can help enter data for that person, then do let me know. We do have other people that have volunteered around the state to scribe those data for people. So there's so many questions. Okay. Are we working with state parks? We are to some extent. You know, they only make up a small part of the surveys, but they are really interested in participating and, you know, allowing us access to state parks. And we've been starting discussions with them and offering trainings for them as well so that their staff can be involved. It got a little bit waysided with the current pandemic, but they are a partner of ours, and we will be working with them more closely.
I can jump in on the Jay Brodsky one here.
Yeah.
So what about birding in locations without cell service, about crossing block boundaries then? And really what this comes down to is we trust you as the atlaser to understand those boundaries. So that comes back to kind of the Atlas essentials. And really that first thing is making sure that if you're atlasing that you have laid the groundwork to be able to follow block boundaries, whether that is downloading the map and printing it out and having that available, whether that is using one of the resources that Julie had pulled up in that blog post to download for offline use. So some of those you can pull into an app that you can use even without cell service. But whatever that is, basically when you're out there birding, we have confidence and trust in you that you are following those block boundaries. And so there are multiple ways to address that through the resources that are on the website. And it seems like probably given the amount of questions around blocks that we can surface that post on the homepage. Mm-hmm. So if we go to that after this and tomorrow, there will be that kind of knowing your location in the field post right at the top on the homepage for you to be able to look at.
Yeah. Yeah. For certain hotspots, somebody, JW Pines, I guess it's Jennifer Wilson Pines, probably asked about Wisconsin BBA for big sites like Horquin Marsh. They created separate hotspots. We have been doing that for a couple of sites throughout the state where there's like a lot of users, and we want to prevent confusion and people submitting data in different blocks. We try not to do that as a general rule, because those new hotspots will only be used for this 5 years and then maybe 20 years down the road. So kind of clutter up that hotspot map. But if there is a location that you know of that is repeatedly being, what's the right word, where people are going and using that hotspot location and crossing multiple boundaries and still submitting their Atlas checklists, then please do let me know, and we can reach out to the local eBird hotspot editor and see if they agree that would be a good move to make. And then I just want to say for Dr. Anthony, that's probably Ajit. Yeah, just email me and I'll give you instructions. I've been getting a lot of requests for how people can be scribes and how to enter secondhand sightings and things like that. So I might just do a post on that as well soon. But then, yeah, you can email me for the time being and I'll follow up with you. So yeah, I think, it's already 8 o'clock. We've already been talking for an hour. And I think that it does seem like a lot of people have a lot of questions. Hopefully we've been able to address a lot of them, some of the most common ones. But there's still obviously a lot more questions out there that you guys have, and probably we'll run into even more questions as the birding atlasing really starts to pick up. Yeah, so I think it looks like we should probably go ahead and schedule another town hall meeting. We'll do that and send that information out to people. And then if you guys have more questions or topics in particular that you want discussed, you can please put those in the chat here. And then just so you guys know, I am typing in my, whoops, I didn't do it to the right. So my email address is right there. So it's nybba3@gmail.com. And then you can also, if you have a more localized question, you can ask your regional coordinator, which again, you can go to that Atlas team page on the website. Yeah, and I do see, you know, somebody did talk about some suggestions. So yeah, if you have more suggestions for future topics or tutorials or webinars that you would like to see, please email me and let me know. We also have quite an active forum on Facebook. So if you join our discussion group on Facebook, you can also get a lot of your questions answered on there as well. Anything else, Ian?
Nothing here. Just, yeah, thanks so much for coming out. I think we peaked at about 125 folks or so that joined. Really appreciate your time and the Atlasing so far. I mean, it's so much fun watching everything kind of roll in day by day. You just can go to the homepage and kind of go to the recent visits and see what folks have been seeing. And I know for me at least, it's just such a fun time of year to be birding, and really cool seeing what you're all reporting. So thanks, and yeah. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Enjoy these next few weeks with all the migrants coming back, and stay safe. And we'll be in touch soon.